And so did you think maybe that... Did you find that you tried the patent attorney classic prep and pros thing, then you tried the solicitor thing and you thought, I like the solicitor thing a bit more, or...?
If you really want the truth...
Yes, I do.
Of course we do.
You can't handle the truth.
Lee Davis and Gwilym Roberts are the two IPs in a pod, and you are listening to a podcast on intellectual property, brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Patent Attorneys.
So, Gwilym, we've moved away from the conference centre at INTA, and we're in an Irish pub in Gaslamp Street.
It's very cool. 5th Avenue, 5th Street?
You're on 5th Street in the Gaslamp district.
Street.
So we brought the guest in already, which is something we don't normally do this early in the bants, but...
True.
Yeah,
but well, they had the geographical knowledge that we like.
No, exactly right, yeah.
I'm fascinated by ketchup guy outside.
It doesn't work for people who can't actually visualise what's happening at the moment.
He's sat at the table and all he's got is a plate of ketchup that he's put almost an entire bottle of ketchup plate.
And has just secured a new bottle of ketchup, a new full bottle of ketchup.
Is that a new one?
Yeah.
What's he going to do with it?
I don't know.
I'm fascinated by that. And yesterday we had duck bike guy.
Yeah.
To
be fair, I think that's all bikes here have like the quacky bow.
But he was
the quacker.
But he was going past that duck protest, quacking every time he went past.
Yeah.
It was quite funny. What's he doing with the ketchup?
Just ignore.
Let's focus on the
just ignore ketchup guy. Yeah.
Okay. Podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're in a pub, Irish pub, and not that matters, but that will help people understand why there's a bit of Irish music in the background. And we've got a really special guest with us today.
Super special. Specialist.
As special as a special guest can possibly be. We have Vicki Salmon, council member, and SEPA alumni. That's whatever the word might be.
The soul of SEPA.
Soul of SEPA. Yeah.
You two are so full of it.
Yeah, we are. Sadly, we are. Hey, Vicki, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Lee. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you on. So, most people know you, obviously, but few people will know backstory and stuff like that.
Okay.
So, can you regale us with how you come to be where you are?
Entirely by accident. Nobody gets anywhere they intend to be on purpose. It's just, you just keep turning corners and being unable to say no. And I think one needs to learn how to say no, and I haven't found that
You've
one
never
out
done
yet.
that. Okay,
No.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So, why the law? Why IP?
Well, I was going to be an accountant. It's funny
Figures,
to understand that.
figures, yeah.
Figures,
Figures,
yeah. I was going to be an accountant, and then a couple of things happened just while I was sorting out careers from university. I was a natural scientist at Cambridge, and one uncle said, "You've done all this science, why do you want to leave it behind and do finance?" And then a neighbour who happened to be a High Court judge said, "I think you should have a look at patents. I wouldn't recommend the patent bar, but being a patent attorney is nice. Come and meet my friend, Mr. Stanley Dane." So I duly went along and met Mr. Dane, and then met some other people, including Nigel Franklin at Forrester Ketley many years ago. And Nigel was so enthusiastic about patents. And I thought, do you know what? If I can be an accountant anytime, but actually it's quite tricky getting into the patent profession and making a go of it. So if I don't have a go now, I'll never get another opportunity. So I took the opportunity and joined Newburn Ellis. And I was there for about 5 years and waiting for my European exam results, having got my British ones. It was, am I in the right job? I want to make a positive decision to stay here. And the next thing I knew, I had a job offer from Stevenson Harwood to requalify as a lawyer. So I moved there, qualified as a lawyer. Then Ludi Lochner, who'd been in charge of the department, had left. Tibble had joined, so I was working with the great Tibble Gold and Nick Headley.
Yeah, we've had Tibble on the podcast.
Yep. And then I went from there to Eversheds, was there for a while. Then just before the Clementi reforms kicked in, I moved back into patent attorney practice, and about 3.5 years ago we set up the new practice, Impact IP. So we've been going for just over 3.5 years, and I love it.
So you're not unique, but
She is.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, you are unique, but you are one of the few that have that sort of mix of both being a patent attorney and solicitor. What do you see yourself as first and foremost, or do you not even look at it that way?
I look at it as having that mixed bag, because actually it's really helpful to have both skills together.
Yeah.
and therefore to be able to look at both the commercial side and the practice side. So I think I'm probably a solicitor more than a patent attorney.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I'm not going to draft patents or do the main arguments at the EPO. If you've got complicated oral proceedings, I'll probably bring my litigation skills in, but most of it, I've got better skilled colleagues to do that part, and I'll do the commercial and the portfolio management and the trademarks and things like that.
Gwilym, did you never think about being a solicitor?
It's I didn't really know what I was getting into when I started seeing how much other law there was on top of IP. It just got a bit scary generally. So hence the uniqueness of people like Vicki actually. And actually, a kind of question I had. So that means you're very much a team player. So you'll work with. If you're not, I didn't realise you don't do the drafting and stuff. But so you'll work with your drafters and everything.
I'll work
like
with
that,
my
or?
drafters. Yeah. So we tend to operate on a fairly team basis anyway, so you'll have the partners overseeing and the attorneys doing the work, or maybe the trainees mucking in too, and just trying to get the work done at the right level with that partner oversight and extra bit coming in where you need it.
And so did you find that you tried the patent attorney classic prep and pros thing, then you tried the solicitor thing and you thought, I like the solicitor thing a bit more, or?
If you really want the truth.
Yes, I do.
Of course we do.
You can't handle the truth.
Though drafting patent claims 4 or 5 years into the profession was absolutely terrifying. The idea that somehow I had to come up with this ideal language which was going to catch unseen infringements in 15 years' time while still being novel over things I'd never heard of was way too scary.
You just put me off my own job.
Yeah, but maybe I just was too much of not in quite the right job at the right time. And I think other people have better technology skills and are better able to do that. And I would prefer someone gave me a piece of paper where they'd already written down the claims, and then I'll critique it and go, well, I think we could just do this and it'll be a bit better if we do that. But that blank sheet of paper is not really my skill forte. So I take my hat off to the drafting patent attorneys.
So setting up your own practice, that's scary, isn't it?
If I had done it entirely of my own, yes, it would be very, very scary. But I had a business partner and we had a good client base and some attorneys to come into the practice. And the admin part of setting up the practice, that was kind of easy because while we'd been in practice in the previous firm, all the law changes had happened. So I'd done all the LLP applications.
Yeah.
Filling all the documents in for IPREG was just kind of just get on with it, really. And I think the legal training helped. So I think what we can put back into the small business practice committee to help them and help new people set up their practices is just really important.
So part of your story, though, is being this SEPA through and through. Council member, volunteer extraordinaire. Can you remember when you joined council?
No, I can't remember which year I joined council. I'm hoping you're going to be able to dig that out for me.
I'll try my best, but some of the SEPA archives are produced on archaic software like WordStar and stuff like that, and no longer readable by any program known to.
WordStar. Who recruited you?
Tibble.
Same as me.
Tibble,
Same as me.
Tibble Gold. He recruited me to council. At the time, I started out in the informals. My first year with New Benellis had been in their Bristol office. Then I came up to London and started attending lectures as opposed to listening to them on tape. I don't know if anybody remembers that stuff.
I've heard the story that they were ferried around the country in audio cassette, yeah?
They were, and it took ages because people used to stack them up before they passed them on.
Yes.
So when it eventually reached a point where you could actually just download them and you didn't get them 3 years too late.
The good old days.
How did they do that? How did they get the tapes round?
You just put them in an envelope and you posted them to the next person on the list.
Actually listened and fired that on.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
listened
kind of
and
makes
fired
sense. There's one tape though.
I don't know. I think at one point they ended up having a machine so they could make more than one copy at a time.
Okay, those machines were available back in the day.
Yeah. So
But
they
the
were
only
easy.
legal use ever,
Tape to tape.
the only legal use ever found, possibly.
Absolutely. And then I became the informals treasurer at a time when they were taking quite money in for running the tutorials.
Yeah.
Then somebody else wanted to take over as treasurer, so I then took over the tutorials and I ran them for 2 or 3 years, passed them on. And while I was doing that, Bob Farwell recruited me to the education committee. So by the time I was working with Tibor at Stevenson Harwood, I was already on EdCom as an informals rep. And then I suppose in my own right, because I must have qualified by then. And then he said, I think you should stand for council. So Bruce Alexander then got me to take over the Social and Programme Committee. And with it, Congress. I went, oh, well, Bruce, you could run Congress on your own. I can't. I need a committee. So we set up the Congress Steering Committee in order to get input from across the profession as to what would be a good subject and how to get people in from all sorts of jurisdictions.
Were you involved in Congress from the very outset?
No, Bruce had run it entirely on his own from the very beginning.
I thought it was Tibble that started it, was it not?
Well, maybe I've got that wrong.
No, I was just wondering, I can imagine Bruce then ran it. Yeah, okay, yeah. Interesting.
So I don't know what it was before Bruce ran it, but I then took it on and ran it for a few years and then moved it on to others, which was a great relief.
I've been knocking around SEPA for 13 years, and you've been a council stalwart and all of that time, as Gwilym has as well.
Yeah.
She used to turn up, though.
Yeah, to be fair, you didn't used to turn up much in the early days. You're pretty good now. You're pretty good now. What's it been like being a council member? You've seen, your roles changed over time in terms of your professional role. You've seen council change over that time.
I think because I spent quite a lot of time in a solicitor's firm, being part of council became really important to me and kind of almost part of my identity in a way.
Yeah, I get that.
And I think it's because in a solicitor's firm, to stay connected to being a patent attorney and to the law changes and everything else, just coming to council and getting the papers, the information you get, it's just been phenomenal just to keep me abreast of things and enable me to do my job. Because at one point at Eversheds, they ran a job to critique a draft patent law which was coming in for another country. And I wouldn't have been able to do it had I not been, or with all the education I got through being on council and understanding about lobbying and things. So
that's really interesting, isn't it? Because what you're talking about there is council not just being a role where you are giving something to SEPA in terms of its governance and its oversight and its control, but where you get back in terms of your own professional development.
I've always felt I got back as well. So I think that's why I've always been able to carry on doing things, because I've always felt I got something out of it as well.
Yeah.
You don't realise how much as well, do you? All the acronyms, who does what and who to talk to and all these things that I think if you don't sit on council or maybe one of the committees, it's quite surprising. I mean, I remember joining PATCOM and being amazed. I just thought, what are these acronyms? What are all these organisations? What are we up to here? I loved it. The moment I got involved, I loved that engagement and the extra information you get.
Yeah, I think the Patents Committee has been a really important committee to be part of, and particularly because they always go through what's coming up in UK law and then European law, and then on the international scene, and particularly what's happening in the US and where you want to lobby and deal with things that are changing.
Yeah.
So, but after doing social and programme, I then took over the litigation committee when Michael Harrison became president. And I then realised, looking back, that I'd been on that committee, chairing it for 13 years. No one should be allowed to do that many years.
Oh, can I leave now?
Yeah, I was going to say 13.
No, you can't leave. But I don't think you should chair a committee for that long.
No,
I think we ought to move them on a little bit more regularly. But it took me. I went through all the UPC lobbying and the drafting and what we could change and what we couldn't change, which was all very interesting. And in the middle of this, we were sitting in a council meeting looking at the Legal Services Act for some reason, which I hadn't been paying proper attention to. And I flipped over and went, hold on, they've revoked our rights to represent in court. Oh my goodness, we're in a transitional period. We need a new regime before this transitional period ends.
Yeah.
So I went down to IPREG and they went, oh, I don't think we've got capacity for that. And I went back to the office where one of my partners was an IPREG council member, a IPREG board member, and he went, oh, I didn't know that needed to be done. I know how to do it. And I went, well, this needs to be done and I don't know how to do it. So we got a consultation process and a new set of regulations.
There's also a good indication of how having experts involved in this on council and everything can make it that you can spot things that other people wouldn't spot, which is really important actually. A bit like CPTPP.
But you need that diversity of experience and vision and understanding, don't you? And so for me, in terms of where we are now with SEPA Council, that's one of the great things about it, is we've got a real richness in diversity on council. And it does mean that often we spot stuff probably far more quickly than we might have done in the past. So you've seen SEPA change quite a lot.
Yeah.
I'm hoping mainly for the better. I'm not trying to blow a trumpet here, but
When I started, we had a tiny, tiny office staff. I think there was Marion and Mick and Di Burridge and maybe one or two others. And now and therefore quite a lot had to be done by the membership.
Yeah.
And I think we have grown and developed the Institute enormously. I think there's much more support, much more is done by a membership team, which is brilliant, because it just means there's more continuity. You don't have to have members all the time trying to decide what to do next and finding that time. But I also think that all the lobbying that's happened recently in the CCTPP has just helped us to get to a more professional place and to be more aware of our own influence and what we can achieve when we set out to do things. And I think that's a great step forward.
But having grown the organisation, so we now have 15, 16 staff, 27 committees, council meeting monthly. Which for an organisation of SEPA's membership size is a fair effort, it's a decent sized business. That means that you need to focus on governance. And
oh my goodness, you're good.
This is way too heavy.
How smooth was that? Are you going to IGC?
I'm going to Internal Governance Committee, IGC.
Can I make a comment question before, just quickly? Because I think what's interesting is that the profession's grown, and SEPA's grown, and SEPA can grow because the profession's bigger, so the funds are there. And
it's a virtuous circle.
I can't work out who's driving it. I know. In the end, the profession's bringing the work in to make it happen. But if it weren't for SEPA, I don't think we'd be in such a strong position. So the growth of the organisation is, I think, part of it's because it's done such a good job for the profession.
Yeah, but that's the profession doing a good job for itself. It's the volunteers coming in to give their time on council and to give their time on committees, because it matters to their firms and it matters to other firms. And I think we're really generous with each other in terms of how we support each other in a profession and how we get together. We've always had strong education. You know, the old transactions of the Institute and the educational lectures that used to be given, and moving that into a webinar base and on. I think that we continue to look at what are likely to be existential threats to our profession as a whole, with all of us feeding into it. You know, you talk to the managing partners, you talk to the heads of department, and how much worthwhile it is for people to put into that lobbying process so that we're looking after each other and we're looking after ourselves.
Yeah. So you would have heard me say this a number of times, and I know in that sense it's anecdotal, but I obviously exist in a network of chief execs of other membership associations, and I know so that for them there are sort of like three hardy perennials when it comes to running an association. Recruitment.
Yeah.
Well, it's not something we lose sleep over, because we're an industry, an ecosystem whereby it's understood that if you come into the system, you become a member of SEPA, you become a student member of SEPA. It's sort of like ingrained in that way. Retention. So we retain about 97.34% of members each year, and we only really lose them because they take retirement and decide to not continue their membership. Very few actually do that. Or they die and patent attorneys live to a ripe old age, is my experience. And then membership engagement. And I've told you often that, you know, most of my peers would give an arm or a leg for the sort of membership engagement we have. There's 27 committees, 200, 300 people regularly giving their time to SEPA in that way. And I've always thought that's quite extraordinary, and you're an example of that, particularly on internal governance, where, you know, maybe not
I'm so tempted to distract you again from the IGC thing. I'm not going to. No,
please do, because you've distracted me already.
Let's do IGC.
You distracted me.
Well, I was actually going to chuck in one more. Sorry, Lee.
Yeah, go on.
But one other comment there is that, again, that engagement is because we know that SEPA's doing good things. You're not engaging for the sake of it, you're engaging, and that virtuous circle continues. Yeah, we get stuff done. So I can only, this isn't a podcast about me, but I can only get stuff done because I've got around me a bunch of really engaged, I want to say senior members, but not in the sort of sense that they are getting on in years.
Some of us are.
but are at the top of their game. Yeah. So I can only get done what I get done because of that volunteer infrastructure around me, and that's something else that any of the people that I work with in that membership space would give anything for. What we have is amazing. You evidence that in the work that you do on internal governance. So why was IGC something that you gravitated towards? Because it's not a natural. Most patent attorneys probably aren't at home doing that kind of really heavy lifting around governance, are they?
We used to have a finance and house committee,
did, yeah.
and somebody decided that it should be reinvented as an internal governance committee. Oh, that was you,
That was
it?
me. Yeah.
And at the time that things were being put forward, you asked for various members of council to put themselves up for election. And I looked at what was on offer, and I actually wanted to learn about governance.
Yeah.
I looked at the list of skills you wanted, and I felt these are the ones I can offer and tick, but these are the ones I don't have and I would like to acquire.
Like to develop, yeah.
And actually governance was one of the ones I wanted to acquire. And we did have some early governance training, but I think it's time to redo that. And we've been working towards that now, so that we have started some new governance training.
It's been really good. I've done my sessions. It's really impressive.
She's really great, isn't she? She really gets you to think about things.
And I take your point there about also, because we've got governance considerations in our firm. I think I know a decent amount, but I've learned from IGC and I've learned from that training as well, actually, and brought stuff back, so it's really useful. And
I think that, we'll hopefully, once the governance training is finished for IGC, it'll be offered to council and to committee chairs. But there might be wider demand. Let's see if actually firms would like some more governance training for themselves in terms of how they manage things.
It was obvious to me when I did the training, we did it together, Vicki, it was obvious to me there was an absolute read across to governing CPA and governing any firm. Yeah, there are core principles around good governance that stand up.
Yeah. And I think that because I trained as a solicitor, there was a time post-qualification I had to do a more advanced legal course. And that was about how do you look at risk, how do you deal with insurance, where are you going with all sorts of things which are hitting us now, like sanctions, regulation.
Yeah.
How do you run a business properly? How do you manage your employees? And I think there's all sorts of things about running a business which historically we might have just fallen into by mistake, but I think a little bit more governance would never go amiss in terms of how you run an organisation.
Can I ask you a really unfair question? I'm going to
ask it anyway.
Because I love the story that you've told. I love the way you described the way that you came into council in those early days, quite early in your career, actually, and how you've kept that fresh throughout your time on council. So someone maybe where you were when you first came onto council might be looking at council and thinking, well, it's not for me. I'm early in my career, I need to be fee earning, I need to be doing this, I need to be doing that. What would you say to them to encourage them to at least think about it?
Oh, I'd say start with a committee. I'd actually say start with a committee. There's going to be something that you're passionate about, somewhere you would like to volunteer, something that you care about. I mean, when I was running social and programme committee, people came along and said, I think we would really like to have, a dragon boat race. And I went, great, well, if you'd like a dragon boat race, you clearly know what you want, you go organise it. Because we are an organisation of volunteers, so you need someone to say, I'd like to get this done. You don't always need permission, you need sensible financial planning around it. So my view has frequently been, okay, I've been around long enough, if I want something to happen, I'll make it happen. Beg for forgiveness afterwards. So if there's something you care about, you really want to know about computer law, or you want to get involved in DEI, or you want to learn about some other things, just find the committee that is doing what you want to do, or come and tell us we need a new committee, and then you can do what you care about. I think the next trick is to learn when to say no. I haven't always known where to say no to you, Lee, because when I finished doing Litcom, you said I should do Education Committee, and we got it all going, but it's much better with Debbie. She's the right person to do that now.
You're quite convincing.
You are convincing.
That'll be why I'm on SEC, I think.
So sometimes it's learning when to say no, so that you do what you can do. But I think if you've done some committees, or you're just interested in being on council, then I think you should stand up, come and find out what it's about. Come and talk to a council member about what to do. You don't need to wait to be invited. I think people who want to contribute should be able to come forward, because that helps the diversity. We won't see diversity when we don't come across it. And so you can't always invite people in and get that huge diversity. I think it helps when people feel confident to say, actually, I'd like to come along and do some of this too.
There's an interesting point there. We've talked about recruitment a couple of times. And quite often it is somebody you've met, worked with, colleagues, somebody you've come across it, and you talk them into it, and they come and join. Not you, sorry, all of us. We all recruit.
Yeah.
Which is really good, but it does worry me a little bit that that's still slightly self-selecting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So but I don't know how to break that, because it is difficult, I think, sometimes to, without that personal touch, how do you bring someone in? I don't know, apart from through podcasts.
But it's interesting. So a comment was made to me a few weeks back about how council needs to change, to move on. So I had a little look back, and I just took a 5-year window, and there are less than half of council members now who were on council 5 years ago. So we're getting that movement in council. We're seeing career young people come on to council, and we're seeing, I think, more diverse representation of the members coming onto council. But within that, you don't want to lose institutional knowledge, and that I think is always the danger for a membership association, is if you always strive for kind of churn and change. And I think the thing that both of you bring, this isn't about positive stroking you unnecessarily and stuff like that, but both of you bring that real depth of institutional knowledge that I would struggle to do my job without.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Thank you. But I think it's important that you have that mix.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a few people who've been on council for a long time, but you do need to find a way of not having a complete council made of people who've been on council for a long time, because then you don't get the variety. And I think we're getting a great mix at the moment.
So I remember my first council meeting. So we're probably March 2012 in Old Seeper, when we were in Chancery Lane.
Yep.
When people would stand up from the council table and walk to what I consider to be a dock to present a paper. So they would go up onto the dais to present their paper, and it was very formal. It was very kind of rigid. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it feels like we're in a different place now. It feels like it's...
There was a little bit wrong with it. Come on. I mean, kind of overwhelmed by procedure. I think that's part of the problem. It was quite unattractive to people to come into it. That was also quite nerve-wracking. So I think the move... And it also wasn't necessarily that effective.
Yeah.
When the process is that strong, you're not necessarily actually achieving what you need to achieve. So you've been very charitable. I think it's good that we've moved on from that.
I mean, the president used to sit up on the dais.
Yeah.
With the ONSEC and I think with the...
Well, I've never had that.
Wow.
Well, that's because by the time...
I retract everything I just said.
By the time you became the ONSEC, I think we'd moved into the new building and we didn't need to sit the ONSEC up on... The ONSEC used to take the minutes.
Oh,
yes.
Hang on. Okay, no, I'm very happy with change. I embrace change.
So, we're at INTA.
Yep.
We're in San Diego. We're not at INTA at the moment, we're in a pub. But we're close enough. Why is INTA important for you, Vicki?
I think that INTA is important because it is one of the biggest IP events of the year.
Yeah.
And in order to do my job, we need to be able to provide services for our client around the world. So I need to be able to send instructions out to different jurisdictions. And we are a people business. Relationships are really important.
Yeah.
And I've been coming here on and off for about 25 years in all the different countries, and maybe not all of the countries they've been to, but lots of different US cities and some European cities. And I think that it's important not only to come and see clients and US attorneys and Australian attorneys and others you may do work for in the UK and in Europe, but also to make sure that you're talking about what they do for your clients as well. Because, and therefore, even though it's allegedly a trademark conference, I've always found patent people here. No, always. There have always been patent people.
And we've got the patent track now, so there is now a patent element to the programme.
Yeah, but there's always been patent people here. I mean, I'm a patent person, and I've been coming for quite a while and have always found other patent attorneys. After all, our firms do both. We do patents and trademarks.
Yeah.
And it's only going to grow. I think I've said it a couple of times that I think it's boiling down to a few massive conferences, and it just saves you travelling around the world. It's probably good for the environment. A few less flights, because you're going to see everybody in one place. And I think that's not necessarily all bad.
Yeah.
And next week, great for us, obviously.
Well, Vicki, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time with us. We've not been able to do this much while we've been at INTA, because we like to, when we do this podcast remotely, we try and end on some kind of tangential closer question.
Yeah. He's all about ketchup guy. I finished him off. But yes.
We can't talk about ketchup guy anymore. He's gone. But I do have a little closer, if you'll indulge me.
Of course.
If that's okay. So I know that both of you mix business and pleasure. Yeah. There are bits of your social personality that blend with your professional personality. So Gwilym, what do you like to do socially with the people that you know professionally?
It's definitely this kind of the travel thing.
Yeah.
And so, we've met up already a couple of times here outside the podcasting. Bumped into Vicki, bumped into you last night when we were watching a duck protest. Thank you for joining us on that. I think it's that and exploring somewhere a bit new. We're working, we're out here for SEEP at the moment, and that's really good. But to do it in a way that's entertaining as well, why not? And I think mixing business and pleasure, I don't think there's much of a distinction if you get it right.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
You've got to get your head down. You've got to work really hard sometimes. But with my client, same thing. I don't know about you, but
he's asking you.
Yeah,
so it's your turn now.
Well, it's about that relationship building. It's a people business. So going and having lunch with a US attorney that you do on a regular basis, you catch up, you hear how their children are doing, you hear how work's going on, you hear how life's going, you talk a bit about some clients and the questions they've got. It's just part of that friendship and the relationship and the fact that you're going to keep meeting them.
Yeah, so I've got two.
Go.
So the first is probably an extension of that. So I like the fact that we can have a really heavy, perhaps, detailed, at times challenging council meeting that might go on beyond the close, and then we can walk across the road. It doesn't have to be a drink or whatever, but we tend to do that. And those conversations can continue, and sometimes we'll be talking about contrasting stuff, and sometimes we're talking about sort of stuff that we're aligned on. But I just like the fact that we have that dynamic outside of the immediacy of governance and the like, where we can continue those conversations.
Can solve problems too. Those relationships again can solve problems.
I also like the fact that we can sometimes just go off and do really good fun stuff. So last year we did the Informals had the football tournament, and we had a little staff team in that, and I went and played in goal. And was the only person who played every single minute of every single match. I know, Vicki, you do your golf.
Yeah, I enjoy the golf. I don't get to PAGS as much as I'd like, and there's a golf tournament at INTA, which I have yet to make sure that I come part of. I'm now on the list, so maybe I'll find out next year.
Are you good at golf?
Sort of mid-ranking.
I don't understand golf. What does even mid-ranking mean?
Well, my number is about 14.3, if that helps you.
It's about 14.3.
Yeah, well, it goes up and down. It goes up and down every time.
So that is such a pattern attorney specific answer, isn't it? It's about 14.37729 recurring.
Between 14.29 and 14.31.
It only means you get on this golf course, you have 16 shots, and you get on that golf course, you have 17 shots.
Right. Thank you so much for coming on. Gwilym, thanks for being the absolute amazing host that you always are, and not being too distracted by ketchup.
I'm sorry I got on your nerves there, but
it did slightly get on my nerves.
I suppose blame him. There's a lot of ketchup going down there.
And let's on to the next one, eh?
Boom.